Okay. Block 6 is all about industrialization. Effects of it, consequences of it, etc. After the Civil War, you have this incredible growth in American industrial economy. This is the second industrial revolution. This is when we're skyscrapers and steel and oil and bridges and locomotives and automobiles eventually, gigantic, steel ships and consumer goods, and what we think of when we think about big. This is the age of those big giant factories, where working conditions aren't so hot. This is the age of skyscrapers and trolleys and urban living that would be in a lot of ways very familiar to us. It happens for a lot of reasons. It's during this time in the 1880s, the United States becomes the world's largest economy. A title which we just gave up last month. This is, it's for a lot of reasons. Post-Civil War, there's a lot of industry that goes into fighting the Civil War. There's a lot of growth during the Civil War. So we have this fact of industrialization. Everything we're going to do in this unit is either this thing itself or consequences and responses to it. Today, we are going to talk about how the farmers responded to industrialization. That's called populism. We're going to see how industrial workers responded to it with the labor movement. We're going to take a good long look at how the middle class responded to this with progressivism. We're going to see how this led to a much more urban America, and how that led, in a lot of ways, to the modernization of American culture. This is everything, by and large, that's in this block. Everything relates to this big concept of the Second Industrial Revolution. And today, we are going to talk about how it affected the farmers. And to kind of center it for ourselves, little farmer hat. Farmer Lorna! Here she is. American agriculture fundamentally changed after the Civil War. Two main reasons. Big change number one, technology. It was no longer sufficient, it was no longer easy to have your 40 acres and your wooden plow and your 2 oxen and, break the dirt, plant the crop, up it grows, and you're good. Farming becomes high-tech in the 1870s, 80s, 90s. The mechanical reaper, for example. Steel plows. Mechanical combines. Big one on this. Oh, of course. Steam, and then gasoline-powered tractors. All of this stuff costs money. To be a farmer in the 1870s, you started to have a little bit of capital on hand. You needed to keep up with everybody else who's farming. You need a tractor. You need a reaper. You need the latest technology. And all of this serves to do what to the agricultural economy? Make it more efficient. What does it mean that an economy is always looking for efficiency? This is what leads to growth. What does it mean to be efficient? To make more with less. Look, if I told a bunch of people, you have to go dig a canal, here's a bunch of spoons, could they do that?
No.
Yeah, they could. It would take a hell of a lot of them, and it would take a long time, but couldn't you dig a canal with spoons?
Plastic spoon.
Sure, why not? That isn't plastic spoons.
Oh,
A little metal soup spoon. With enough people, couldn't you dig a canal with spoons?
Sure.
Sure, why not? I would make that more efficient if I gave everybody a shovel. I would make that even more efficient if I invented this enormous machine called a diesel tractor. A diesel tractor, a giant machine that digs canals, is a lot more efficient than a bunch of people walking around with spoons. They both do the job, just one does the job a lot more efficiently than the other. And what's your question?
What was the third one? That's mechanical.
A combine.
Oh,
In terms of agricultural efficiency, I'll give you a very simple statistic. In 1790, 90% of Americans were farmers growing food for 100% of Americans. Okay, so 90% of Americans in 1790 were farmers. By about 1990, about 1% of Americans are farmers growing food for 100% of Americans and for millions of people around the world as well. That's efficiency, folks. That an economy is always looking for efficiency. When anyone been to like one of the restaurants now, they just put your order in on a little tablet on the table? And said there was that not Applebee's, Chili's or something a couple months ago. And there on the table is a little device. You just put your order in there if you want. That is efficiency. Okay? I don't like it. I like to flirt with the waitresses. But you know why? Because I gotta flirt back. You're tipping them, man. They don't flirt back at me. Anyway. Farm technology changes, and it makes farming much more of a business, if you will. The second change that happened was that farms became an integrated part of a global economy. All of those trains and iron ships and steel ships and telegraph lines and transportation made it so if Lorna that's right. 2 days. If Lorna Farmer is growing wheat in Kansas, where's that wheat going to end up? Everywhere. It might end up in Paris. It might end up in New York. It might end up in St. Louis. It might end up in Australia. We don't know. That the global market is going to move Lorna Farmer's wheat all around the world. That's by definition what a global market is. And because wheat is now a global commodity, its price is determined where? Who determines the global price of wheat?
Sellers.
And buyers. There's no one person sitting in an office going, how much are we going to charge for wheat today? It's just a function of the market. Because it's just a function of a global market, it fluctuates. If there's a terrible drought in India, what happens to the price of wheat grown in Kansas? Goes up. Because there's less wheat in the world. There's less of something, what happens to the price? Goes up. Today's lecture is all about economics. That's what happened with gas. Why is gas prices cratering?
So there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of places. I haven't seen gas under $2 in many years.
Because they had the boom, the gas boom.
Yeah, the fracking boom.
Hey.
Exactly. The United States has become the world's largest exporter of gas
In like a month.
in the last several years. What this says to people, is we have more gas now, and in the future we plan on having even more. And what does that do to the price of oil? It goes down and everybody gets to have more money in their pockets. Everybody's happy, except for Vladimir Putin. He's not happy, which is fine. He's never happy. He's especially not happy now.
Who?
Putin. Entire economy is based on oil. Like the price crater, so does the Russian economy. Saudis aren't particularly thrilled either. My point is, if there's a war in Europe and all the farmers are taken out of their fields to join the army, what happens to the price of wheat? Goes up. If there is an incredibly great growing season in Australia and they have a huge bumper crop of wheat, what happens to Lorna's wheat price in Kansas? Goes down. My point is this, that in a global economy, Lorna the farmer has no control over the cost of her wheat. Nothing that Lorna can do can influence the global price of her 100-acre wheat crop. She is completely dependent then on forces well outside of her control. Imagine for a moment that you worked at Aeropostale and your wages changed week to week. That you sit there and you say, I'm responsible to pay for my car insurance, my cell phone, and gas. And and going out with my friends. Those are my 4 expenses. I'm 17 years old. Well, it's going to make life hard to plan if one week you go to Aeropostale and you make $18 an hour, and the next week you walk into work and you make $4 an hour. The next week you make $12. The week after that you make $6.50. The week after that you make $22. This makes planning very, very hard. You might end up with the same amount of money if someone just said, here, $9 an hour. At the end of the year, you might end up with the same amount of money, but it's that fluctuation that's going to really kind of make it hard for you to plan what you're doing. If you work 6 weeks in a row making a lot of money, you start to think, hey man, I'm always going to be making a lot of money. I'm going to go use my credit card, buy a bunch of stuff that night, go crap. Now I'm making $4 an hour, I have a credit card bill that I can't afford. This would be like. So there's a lot of changes and there's a lot of uncertainty in the farming economy in the United States in the post-Civil War years. Okay. So here we have this. The farmers came together, Lorna and all of her buddies, came together, and they had a list of problems. And let's see if we can kind of list out some of the problems that Lorna and the farmers had. One we just kind of talked about, price fluctuations. That Lorna never knew, because also, Lorna as a farmer, when does she make all of her money in a year? When does she make her money? Not during the growing season at all. She doesn't make a dime during the growing season.
After when everything is powdered.
Yeah, that she gets her money really pretty much once a year. She grows her crop, she harvests it, she takes her harvest to market where she is paid. And that paid has to take her to the next time she harvests a crop. She has to figure it. Being a farmer is not easy. She has to figure out how to take that money, plant next year's crop, pay off her loans, feed her family. Because, here's Lorna and Mr. Lorna. And they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 kids and a little baby. She has to figure out, who's getting shoes this year? Who are we going to send to school and who do we have to keep on the farm to work? That she has some pretty significant personal decisions to make with this money that she kind of takes in once a year, never knowing how much it's going to be. So it's a very precarious life in a lot of ways due to these price fluctuations. 2, she is in serious debt to a bank because, she needed to buy that stuff. That if she doesn't have the tractor and the combine and the reaper, she's not going to be able to farm enough to make it work. So every year, Lorna owes the bank money. And she's gonna owe the bank money whether she has a really great crop or not such a great crop. If you have a car loan and you lose your job, guess what? You still have a car loan. If you take out $100,000 in debt to go to college, major in art history and pour coffee for a living, guess what? You still have $100,000 in loan to college. They don't sit there and say, oh, we're really sorry, you don't have to pay that back. It's not how it works, guys. They don't do it that way. So she is in debt to banks. She has problems with the railroads. Lorna's crop gets taken to market by rail. But here's Lorna's farm out in the middle of Kansas. 3 miles away, there's a town with a railroad line. Well, once a year, Lorna has to load up the old wagon and start bringing her crop to the railway depot, where she will load it up and get paid for it. She has to pay the railroad company, right? She's using their service, she's shipping her stuff on their line. If she doesn't want to ship it on their line, well, keep it. What the hell Lorna's going to do with 100 acres worth of wheat? That's not the railroad's problem. That's Lorna's problem. So Lorna has to pay the railroad company. But how many railroad companies are there here? One. There's no competition here. Lorna can't usually say, you know what, I don't like this railroad, I'll go to this one. Because out in the middle of Kansas, there's not 100 railroads to choose from. So what this did was it made Lorna kind of dependent on whatever railroad happened to be near her. And these are big, giant railroad companies. Guys like J.P. Morgan owning those. The railroads do things that treat Lorna in a way that she thinks is unfair. For example, they charge Lorna $1 per ton per mile, but they charge a really big company 70 cents per ton per mile. That's called an economy of scale. That's why stuff at Walmart's a lot cheaper. Why is Walmart stuff cheaper?
Because you buy a lot more.
You don't.
Because we just-
They do.
Yeah,
If Walmart is going to buy light bulbs,
you buy a lot of like.
they get in touch with the light bulb company and say, we'd like 50 million light bulbs. And the light bulb company says, yes! Because if you're a light bulb company and Walmart's buying from you, that's awesome. So what do you do to your price to make it kind of more attractive to Walmart?
No.
Yeah, if they're buying 50 million of them, you can lower your price a little bit. Walmart saves money buying because they're buying 50 million. Then when Walmart sticks them in the store, the price looks lower to you. Now, if we're sitting here at Sandra's light store, when she buys light bulbs, she doesn't buy 50 million, maybe she buys 50. Does she get the discount from the light bulb company?
No.
No, of course not. So in Sandra's light bulb store, it's a lot more expensive than it is at Walmart. That's why we like Walmart, because it's cheap.
Basically, just stealing their business.
Walmart's not stealing their business. Walmart is offering you, the consumer who works hard for your money, a cheaper price on light bulbs. And we can look at that either way. Sandra's going to say that stupid, awful, big, giant company stealing my business. But the guy who's, working 2 jobs to get by, he's definitely benefiting from stuff that he wants being cheaper at Walmart. It's not a one-sided thing, that we have to be able to look at that from both angles. That's a good point. But obviously, Sandra's going to look at it one way, and Deontay, who has, kids at home, and he's going to look at it a different way. He's like, I'm sorry, Sandra, but, I need cheap light bulbs. Sorry.
Where's my light bulb?
Number 4 is kind of going to be the secret one that we're going to talk about at the end because this is confusing, and then everything up to that in the last part of the lecture is going to be on hard money, soft money, inflation, which confuses the hell out of everyone. All right, so here are some problems that American farmers are having second half of the 19th century after the Civil War, and they kind of get together, and their joint response is called populism. Populism is the reaction of the farmers to industrialization. That if you're asked the question, what effects did industrialization have? How did people respond to industrialization? You know, how did different sorts of Americans respond to the changes of industrialization? This is how the farmers did. They started a movement that came to be generally known as the populist movement. And they argued for a bunch of things. Nationalization of the railroads. Excuse me, nationalization of banks. What does it mean if you nationalize something? This is something that's going to be brought up again.
You establish it as like a standard.
Who owns the bank? What? No. Nope. Bank owners. Ordinary private citizens. Banks are owned by private citizens, or banks are corporate, or banks are incorporated. And what does it mean? Who owns a corporation? I'm sorry? Who owns a corporation, folks? No, the CEO is just the chief officer. He doesn't own it. Not necessarily. Does Henry Ford still own Ford? Henry Ford's been dead 80 years. Who owns a corporation?
The president of the corporation?
No, he's just the president.
Oh, he's just
The owner.
No, he might be the most powerful person in the company, but he is not the owner necessarily.
Stop.
Anybody who buys
Stop.
stock in it.
Hey, I knew
A
that.
corporation is owned by anyone who owns stock in that corporation. Now, it might be the founder. Mark Zuckerberg owns 50.1% of Facebook, and he owns 50.1% of Facebook, so he can run it. But a corporation works. You have as many voting rights as percentage of stock that you own on the board of a corporation. You own 10% of the stock in a company, you have 10% of the say in the company. You own 50.1%, well, you don't gotta listen to anybody else because you own half the company. Coca-Cola is owned by millions of people around the world. If you own one share of Coca-Cola, you own that percentage of Coca-Cola, or Google, or Apple, or whatever we're talking about. So that's who owns industries in a free market economy. What does it mean if you wish to, I'm going to do that again, I'm sure. What does it mean if you wish to nationalize an industry?
bring it to a countrywide wire.
They like to like label
Isn't it to spread it across?
What do you mean give it to more people?
Advertise?
Available.
Yeah. Like Burger King.
It's a corporation.
Is it an advertisement?
No. There are very few nationalized industries in the United States. Amtrak is one. What does it mean to nationalize an industry? To take it from its private owners
Oh,
and give it to
the government?
the government. It is owned by Aurelio, it is owned by the nation. Populists wanted to take these privately run banks and say, Jackie the banker is oppressing and taking advantage of poor Laura the farmer. She should not have the ability to do that. We're going to yoink her bank away from her, and the government apparently will run it to the benefit of everybody. That's the idea.
Wait, so you want to take the banks away from the banks?
Yes. That's national. And to nationalize any industry means to put it in the hands of the state.
How do you take it away?
You say,
Give me.
Never mind.
give me your bank.
Well,
Now, one of the reasons it never happened in America, because it might be found to be unconstitutional. That we cannot deprive Jackie of her property without, due process of law and offering her a fair price. But in the end, like when Great Britain nationalized half of its industries after World War II, Parliament just passes a law that says there's no such thing as private British airplane companies anymore. It's all British Airways run by the government. And if you had an airplane company, they would give you some money and then they would say, thank you very much, goodbye. That's nationalization. Socialist paradise. Problems with the railroads, what the populists wanted was for the government to regulate the railroads. That government should pass laws saying things like you can't charge Lorna any more money than you charge anybody else. That you can't do this, you can't, that to regulate something means to oversee it. So the populists wanted these railroads that they were having problems with overseen by government. Okay? We see, a desire for a powerful government here, a desire for a powerful government here. One thing that they did, this is not something that government had anything to do with, to deal with price fluctuation, was something called cooperatives. All right, now to see if we can understand this. Here is Lorna's farm. She's got 120 acres out in Kansas. She's got a cute little farmhouse. There she is, there's her husband, there's her 8 kids. She takes a chunk of her land and leaves it fallow every year as to, you don't grow anything. You let the soil kind of recover. You take a part of it and you grow kind of home stuff, some peach, some stuff to use in her kitchen. Takes another chunk and it lies fallow. And on 90 acres of her land, she grows wheat. Once a year, she harvests this wheat. She brings it to market. Goes all around the world. She has, let's say the price this year was $10, per acre of wheat. So she goes to market and gets $900 for the price of her crop. Okay? And she uses that $900 to buy new seeds for next year's crop, to pay her mortgage, to pay the bank for all of her, equipment that she bought, to buy shoes for her kids, luxuries that she might want. She needs a new bed, a piece of furniture, whatever, the stuff you need for life. She has $900. It has to last the next 12 months. She has to make sure she pays all of the people that, that she owes money to. She has to make sure that, it lasts until the next time she has a harvest to bring in. Okay. Year goes by, everyone's happy, farm is successful. Next year rolls around, she plants the same 90 acres, but as we talked about before, price of wheat goes down. And now instead of getting $10 an acre of wheat, the price has gone down to $8. So now all of a sudden, she only walks out of the market with $720. She can do nothing about the price of wheat this year. It's set at the global market, the global rate. But she has all the same expenses, pretty much. She still has to buy seeds for next year. She still has to pay the bank. She still has to pay the company. She still has to give, shoes for her kids. She still needs to do all these things. But now she has $180 less than she did last year to do it. So, if we assume, as we're going to for the purposes of this discussion, that Lorna is a reasonable, logical, intelligent person, Lorna, what is the one thing that you can do next year to get that number back up to 900? Here on your 120 acre farm. What, Lorna? Plant more wheat. Lorna says, well, if I only made $8 an acre, if I'm gonna make $8 an acre next year, I'm gonna plant 120 acres. 8 times 12 is 96. I should come out with $960. And that gets me back to where I was before. But what's the problem? What happens, because we assume that not only is Lorna Farmer gonna do this, plant 30 more acres, but what is everyone else wheat farmer in the world gonna do? Same thing. And what's gonna happen?
Competition.
No, not competition. What's gonna happen to the price of wheat? It's gonna drop even further because what are we doing? We're making more wheat. It's reasonable and logical for Lorna on the face to plant more wheat to make up for this cost, but everybody's going to do that. And we're going to drive the price of wheat down even further. This is not because if the price of wheat goes down next year, it's not like Lorna can plant more acres. She's out of acres. And she certainly doesn't have enough money to buy more land. This is where cooperatives came in. What do you think a cooperative is? It's a bunch of farmers cooperating. It's a bunch of farmers cooperating. So Lorna gets, 50 farmers in her local area to kind of sign on to this cooperative. And what they do is they pool their crops, they pool their money. And then in years where there's a lot of wheat, they don't sell it all, they store it, they put it in silos, and they hold on to it. Then the next time the price of wheat is really high, what do? They release it and sell it at a larger profit. This is what many farmers did in the 1870s and 80s. They established cooperatives to kind of soften the blow, to provide insurance against the fluctuation of prices. Somebody in my third period class was saying, he was complaining about like the repair costs for like laptops if you break your laptop. Like, you know what he should do? He should start his own little Upper Academy laptop insurance company. Charge everybody $3 a month, and if you break your laptop, the insurance company will pay for it. Like if someone were to do that, it would be the coolest thing like ever to happen at this school. And it would not like you could. I think you could do it. You just collect, and then if you happen to break it, then you get money that and if you don't break it, you've given your money away for nothing. But that's what insurance is. How many of you would be willing to put in $3 or $5 a month for laptop protection insurance?
But that's $10. Like 2 months is already $10.
Well, then we would have, the person would have to do research, like how many were broken last year, what the cost is, whatever the cost would be. You put in $1 or $2, $3 for laptop insurance. I bet you could do that. Oh, see now, but here's the problem. If we knew that Deja broke her laptop next year, how much would we wouldn't charge her the same amount as we would charge someone who didn't break their laptop last year. She's more of a risk. That's why you pay more if you're a risk with insurance. Anyway, here, so we understand the purpose of cooperatives. All right. We're well timed to take care of this last difficult-ish concept. Here is populism. Support cooperatives, support the nationalization of banks, support regulation of railroads, and the last thing that populists supported, which is kind of difficult, we're going to go through it, is soft money. Soft money. I'm going to have to use this board all again. We'll keep Lorna up there, Lorna Farmer. All right. I know economics is confusing for many of you. Bear with me. We're going to make a little chart. At the beginning, we talked about the $1,000
Right here.
that Lorna borrowed from the bank to buy all of her really cool new farm equipment, okay? She took out a loan with the value of her land as collateral, and the bank made it a 10-year loan, meaning that every year she had to pay back a percentage, so she would have the whole loan paid off in 10 years. Lorna did not have any kind of bad credit, so they gave her this $1,000 loan at 8% interest, which means over the 10 years, she will pay back $1,080. I don't know if this is going to add up, but let's try it. So the first year she owes 105, 50, 110, 115, 125, 130. We're going to get to 180. Or we're going to get to 5, 15, 20, 30, 35, 40, 50, 55, 65. I think if you add all those up, it'll be 1080. My quick mental math. No, that's way too much. I screwed that up. It should be 108. Sorry. Wait, 112.
Would it be 108 in each one?
It could be. Why don't we do it that way? So, we have a non-variable loan. Every year, Lorna owes the bank on January 1st, $108. She makes $900 a year from her crop, remember. That pays her mortgage, that pays everything, including on January 1st, the bank for her equipment. So in year one, she does very well, crops are good. She has $108 to pay off her loan. She's good. Next year, though, we saw crop prices fall. It fell by about 15%. Next year, she only has $90. Now she's $18 in the hole. She didn't have enough. Remember that, if she had $900 the first year and $720 the next year, she has the same expenses pretty much. She's got to cut somewhere. And, she goes and talks to the bank and says, look, I'll give you most of it, but I don't have all of it. The bank says, all right. And the next year things get a little better. She makes more money with her crops, but still she's, still what, 13? Now she's in debt a little bit more. Next year's 100. Next year's really good. Bumper crop. A lot of money. She pays a lot of it back. She's down to, she owes $26 more to the bank this year. So really what this is in year 6, she doesn't owe 108. She owes the 108 plus the 26 that she hasn't paid, which is what, 134. She really owes 134 this year. But in year 6, a tornado hits her farm, wipes out half of her crop. It's weather, man, it happens. It's an act of God. She only has 28. That's a problem. Now she's what? 80 in the hole. Now she's going to be down this year.
So then she has to add it up to 600.
She actually owes the bank 214. This is becoming a pretty significant chunk of her life, and now she's more than a year behind on her loan. And at some point, the bank is going to say, what is the bank going to do? Repossess. And if Lorna's tools and equipment are all repossessed, what happens to Lorna's farm? She can't run it, and the bank is going to repossess the mortgage. And then Lorna is out of luck. Maybe she, the bank offers, there's different things the bank offers. The bank will own it and she'll rent her own land back from the bank, or she'll give up on farming altogether and move to the city. But this is not, Lorna does not want this to happen. Even if she makes what she kind of anticipated making that year, she's still sitting there. She hasn't gone further into debt, but she still owes more than twice what she thought she was going to. How can Lorna solve this problem? And Lorna can't do it by herself. What do we have to have? What can bring this graph back into happiness for Lorna? We can't change this number much. That's the contract we signed with the bank. The bank does not smile upon you walking in and saying, I know I borrowed 1,000, I'm only going to pay back 500. The bank doesn't smile on that. So what could happen here? What could we do? What number has to change? The top number. How the hell do you change the top number? By what? Yeah, all right, so one of the first things Lorna's going to do is really cut back. You know, her kids don't get shoes this year. You know, they don't buy meat, once a week for dinner. We're going, because Lorna and her family are frugal, economic, good people, they're going to cut back as far as they can. Is that sort of stuff going to really solve this problem? Not, maybe if you were $20, but not $100. Lorna needs a bigger solution than that. How can we change that number? We can't grow more. I'm sorry?
An investor might use that thing.
What investor would invest in a farm that's lost this amount of money in the last 7 years? Can't go to the bank for another loan. What are you gonna nationalize? A farm? Could. That's pretty extreme though. There's ways to do it. So a lot of farmers are gonna say, yeah, let's nationalize the bank, and then have the government say, nobody owes us money anymore. Yay! That's dismissed by most people. Socialism, or worse. Big brother communism, which we're going to talk about later this week. She needs help. This populist movement is going to argue for something that it says will help Lorna. What do we have to do to these numbers? Increase them. What's another word for that? And when you pump it up, you do what? Inflate it. What are we going to try to do, Steph, to the economy? To create what? Inflation. The farmers want to create inflation. How do you create inflation? All right, I want to do a little thought experiment with you right now. Right? I want you all to imagine that you are living on an island that is completely cut off from the rest of the world. Just the 25 of you. On this island, we all have our own little jobs and economic roles, and there's farms and trees, it's an economically successful, prosperous island. And on this island, we have $100 in the economy. All of our stuff in this economy is done with $100. Okay, everybody clear on that kind of mental idea? All of our payments, everything is done with $100. Okay? We good on that, kind of mentally?
So if I want to buy something, I just give you $100.
No, $100 is everything.
Oh, all right.
The entire economy adds up to exactly $100.
All right.
The amount I make, you produce, she produces, it's all $100.
Wow.
Okay? Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if it relates to that, but can't she just instead of making just one crop, make different types of crops?
Sure, she can try to diversify, but again, is there a crop that's going to make her $1 million next year? And she can't grow diamonds. She can try corn, and maybe corn this year is a little higher. But the soil's good for wheat. It might not be so good for corn. This might not be an area where corn grows as well as wheat does. All right, so back to our island. I want you to imagine that out of nowhere, a magical helicopter appears and drops another $100 on the island and it flies away and never be seen again. Would anybody be richer?
No.
Why not?
Because
What would, if I'm on original island, the $100 island, and I sell shoes for $1 a pair, as soon as that helicopter leaves,
$2.
I'm gonna sell shoes for $2.
Same percentage.
That's exactly, it's the same percentage of the whole. That's inflation. I have created inflation in my economy, but have I created wealth?
No.
No, I've done nothing except made everything 2 times more expensive. All right, so that's inflation. The farmers want inflation, and I'm going to show you very quickly why the farmers want inflation. Let's say, up here, follow along. Let's say in year, I stopped at 6 for a reason. In year 7, there's a 20% inflation. You made originally would have been $100, but with a 20% inflation, how many dollars do you have this year? How many dollars? It would have been 100. Now I had a 20% inflation. How many dollars do I have? 120. That's better. Next year, there's a 30% inflation on top of that. 30% on 120. So add 36. I'm still producing, which would have been at the beginning, 100. I'm not producing any more wheat. I'm just getting more dollars for the wheat I am producing. There's another 30% increase in inflation in year 9. So what, 45, almost 50? Damn! That's awesome, says
Bottom number
Marta.
never changes, right?
I'm sorry. The bottom number can't change. That's in a contract. When you sign the contract with the bank, it said $108 a year every year, no questions asked. Well, in year 9, there's another 20% inflation. Who benefits, obviously, from inflation? The farmer does. The farmer says, oh my God, we need inflation in our economy because it's going to make it way easier to do what? Pay back my loan. That's great for Lorna. Who does it really stink for? It stinks for the bank. The bank says, I lent out $1,000. I got back $1,080, but is that $1,080 really worth nearly as much as what it was worth at the beginning? No, because what has inflation done to the relative worth, the purchasing power of that $1,080? It's go back to our island. If I saved $1 to buy shoes, and I was holding on to that dollar, I wanted those shoes more than anything in the world, but then all of a sudden I walked into the store the next day, and they were $2. Shit. I bought 1 shoe. Not going to be very helpful. Inflation kills the bank, and because it kills the bank, it kills other people too. Let's say that Lorna is awesome. Lorna, she paid off her loan in 9 years. She's rolling in these inflated dollars. Just kind of a funny picture, little like buttons to help her. Now the bank's holding on to that $1,080. Debbie comes in and says, I need a loan to buy equipment. But with inflation, the bank only has $1,080 now. How much is that stuff going to cost post-inflation? More or less than this? More. Is the bank going to be able to lend Debbie the money she needs to buy equipment. What has happened to the price of equipment in this inflationary? It would go up. That the same. So Lorna buys the equipment in year 1 for $1,000. How much does that equipment cost by year 10? $2,000. But how much money does the bank have to make a new loan? Oh, no, because the bank only got $1,080. So Debbie comes in and says, I need a $2,000 loan, and the bank says we only have $1,080. We're not getting this. Where's the bank's money coming from? The
Interest.
Well, yeah, the bank gets $1,080, $1,000 at 8% interest. So the bank is sitting there with $1,080, but that $1,080 is no longer sufficient to lend Debbie the money she needs. Debbie won't get the loan. Debbie won't buy the farm. Our economy does not grow. Here's Judy. Judy's been working with her husband 40 years in the shoe store. 40 years with her husband Morty. Every week, Morty and Judy go down to the bank and they put $20 into the savings account. Every week for 40 years they do it. Judy says, when we turn 65, Morty, we're going to take that money out of the bank and we're going to go have a hell of a lot. We're going to travel the world with the money. We worked hard our whole life, Judy and Morty say. They put $20 away every week. Well, now, after 40 years, they go to the bank, and how much is that savings worth? Nothing. Maybe just enough to keep them working in the shoe store. Inflation has done what to Morty and Judy's savings? Made it worth. It made it worthless. They still have the same number of dollars, but those dollars do less. Half as much, a third as much, whatever it is. Like, we didn't run any real numbers here. So my point is this. The fourth thing that, so if we want inflation, we understand why, I think. Farmers want inflation. It allows them to pay off their loans. Other people do not want inflation. It kills banks, hurts investment, wipes out savings, but the farmers really want it. How do you create inflation in an economy? Her savings got wiped out. That's Morty over there. How do you... All right, so this gets us into the concept between hard money and soft money. Perfect time. Hard money, soft money. Hard money is gold. Gold is what's considered to be hard money. Everyone knows gold has value. Gold is valuable all around the world. Gold is money. And in the 1870s and 80s, the United States had a hard money supply. You could not, every dollar you had was gold. There was no paper money. There was no silver money. You wanted to spend money, it was gold. How much gold is there out there? Not that much, really. So what happens to the supply of money? Does it ever really go up? No. And when the supply of money does not go up, what happens to prices? They stay the same. Hard money is not inflationary. If we have $1 billion in physical gold in the economy, you can't add more money unless you add what? More gold. And gold it doesn't grow on trees. You have to find it and dig it out of the ground. You have to mine it, put it through a mint. hard money support. This goes to that whole Symptom 3, the Republicans supported hard money and the Democrats soft money. This is what this is. Hard money is gold. If you want, so we understand that there's a limited supply of gold in the world. How do you create inflation then? You can't grow gold on trees, so what do you have to do?
Double price.
You can't print some. The Supreme Court has said you can't have, paper money is unconstitutional. Okay? There's paper money during the Civil War to fund the government during the Civil War, but after the Civil War, paper money is found to be unconstitutional. The government can't do that. So, paper is the ultimate soft money. But if you can't do paper, what's in between gold and paper? Silver. Silver. Advocates of soft money advocated for what's known as the monetization of silver. Monetization means to make money. You took silver and you turned it into money. How do you turn silver into money? You melt it down, you make it into a coin. You melt it down, you put someone's picture on it, you say this is now worth $1. It's $1 worth of silver. Silver is less expensive than gold. Silver is more common than gold. The United States is sitting on gigantic piles of silver in the 1870s and 1880s. And people want to turn that silver into dollars. And in so doing, you have more dollars in the economy. What does that create? Inflation, which helps the farmers like Lorna. Soft money. That makes sense. What is soft money? All right, now let's have a quick relook at what our populists want and advocate for. So, 1, nationalization of banks.
Popular.
Regulation of railroads. Soft money. They also want some other things like direct election as senators, but we're focused on the economic stuff. This is the populists.
What?
The populists run their own candidates for president in 1888 and 1892. What part of the country do you think they do well in? Yeah, the farming places, those, where are they?
And those down south, no, west.
West. Who do Southerners vote for? We should know this. Yeah. Who do Southerners vote for? Post-Reconstruction Southerners. Who do they vote for? Go back up. Guys, who do post-Reconstruction Southerners vote for? Democrats. Who do Northerners vote for? Republicans. Who votes populist? Out west. The Great Plains states, the Rocky Mountain states, the western farming states vote populist. So, they don't win. Republicans and Democrats keep winning. Mostly Republicans. Which leads a lot of Democrats to kind of look at this and say, you know, we've been losing lots of elections since Abraham Lincoln. We can benefit by taking some of this stuff that the populists are arguing and make it ours. So in 1896, William Jennings Bryan, the boy orator of the Platte, he's a populist, he's from Nebraska, the Platte River, that's why he's called that. He gives this speech at the Democratic Convention in 1896, and he pretty much says, we, the farmers, are not going to be crucified on a cross of gold. Hard money. And what basically happens is the Democrats, see, this never happens. But these two things become part of the Democratic Party. And because the Democratic Party takes this away, what happens to the populists? They die out, and people who voted populist just simply vote for Democrats. Eventually, this never happens in the United States. Soft money is going to have to wait until the Great Depression in the 1930s. But the one kind of success that the populists had was starting in the 1890s, the government is going to begin to regulate the railroads. These are things that the railroads can do, can't do, to these people, that people, etc. So let's just do a quick review. The point of this is to assess reaction due to industrialization. How did farmers react to industrialization? By the populist movement.
Mr. Peretti, can you please contact me in office, Mr. Peretti?
Farmers were in debt to banks. Farmers could no longer, Marbella and Elizabeth, depend on stable prices. They worked through the political system to solve these problems. They formed the Populist Party. They wanted to nationalize the banks, regulate the railroads, provide soft money. Did they succeed by themselves? No. Their ideas got merged into the Democratic Party, and they had limited, partial success with these ideas. Economics is always tricky for a lot of people. Any questions on that? Yeah, and economics is never simple. Tomorrow's is a lot easier. Tomorrow we do integration. But if there are no questions, we can knock off.